Out here in Oregon, I had the chance to get my hands on a 2018 Dodge Challenger and a 2018 Ford Mustang at exactly the same time. So in this video, we'll be answering the question, which is right for you, the Mustang or the Challenger? Let's go over what we have in front of us. On this side, we have a 2018 Ford Mustang. It was refreshed for the 2018 model year. We have a 10-speed automatic transmission and a 5-liter V8 under the hood. And we have a refreshed front end just for the 2018 model year. Definitely some interior tweaks going on as well. If you recall, we recently had a video on the 2018 Ford Mustang EcoBoost. And on this side, we have the Dodge Challenger, which, well, hasn't actually changed that much since the Challenger was launched in the United States for this body style. Although the exterior of the Challenger hasn't changed for what seems like almost a decade, we do have very different things going on underneath the hood because Dodge has been on a very interesting mission to try and jam as much power under this hood as possible. You can get this with either 707 horsepower or well over 800 if your pockets are deep enough. The model that we're looking at right here is actually the Hellcat wide body, 707 horsepower, and $72,590 starting. Not really a direct competitor to the Ford Mustang over here on this side, although the Mustang is definitely a better value, I would say, right up front. Instead, I think the best competitor for the Mustang from the Challenger would actually be the Challenger 392. That would come in at $40,495, give you 485 horsepower versus the 435 horsepower for $36,950 over here with the Mustang. As you'd expect out of an American performance vehicle, you find V8 engines under both hoods. But the engine lineups other than that are quite different. Under the Challenger's hood, things start out with a 3.6-liter V6 engine producing 305 horsepower, whereas the Mustang starts out with a 2.3-liter turbocharged engine producing 310 horsepower. We actually no longer find a naturally aspirated V6 engine in the Mustang for America. When it comes to V8s, the Mustang offers two different engines. We have a 5-liter V8 in the Mustang GT. It's a thoroughly modern engine that produces 460 horsepower. And if you get the GT 350, then that bumps things up to 526, still out of a 5-liter V8. Over on this side, we have kind of a different thing going on. We have a 5.7-liter Hemi producing 375 horsepower. That is notably less power than the 5-liter V8 over on this side. But if you want more power, there are plenty of other engines available. We then have a 6.4-liter Hemi producing 485 horsepower, a 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi producing 707 horsepower, or if you want to get completely crazy in your Challenger, you can get the Demon and get 840 horsepower right here under this same hood. Both vehicles offer a selection of manual and automatic transmissions, but things are a little bit different here as well. You can get a manual transmission basically in any flavor of your Mustang or the 10-speed automatic transmission, but you can't get the automatic on the GT 350. Over here on the Challenger, you can get a manual transmission with some of the engine options, but not all of them, and then an 8-speed automatic transmission is going to be found throughout the lineup. If you want the optimum in performance and fuel economy for both vehicles, you will have to select the automatic transmission, whether it's the 8-speed under this hood or the 10-speed over here. 0 to 60 times and quarter-mile times are definitely better in both of these vehicles with the automatic transmission. That's just because the gear ratios are very advantageous on both of them, and both of them will shift faster than you can. When it comes to engines, which vehicle is right for you depends on what you're looking for. I really like the 2.3-liter turbo in the Mustang. I actually think that is my favorite engine. It makes the Mustang feel very light. It also makes it feel more like a European sports car. 310 horsepower is a great deal of power already, and the Mustang is a lot lighter than the Challenger, so it really does work well in this vehicle. Over here on the Challenger, I think that the sweet spot is actually the 6.4-liter V8 producing 485 horsepower. This is a bigger, heavier car, so it needs more power to feel as much fun as we find over here in the Mustang. So I'd say it depends on what you're looking for. If you want the most horsepower under the hood, that would be found right here under the hood of the Challenger. But if you want value performance, that would definitely be here under the hood of the Mustang, because you can get the Challenger to go faster than a Mustang GT or a GT 350, but it's going to cost you an awful lot more. Obviously, both the Mustang and the Challenger are two-door coupes, but the overall style of the vehicles is a little bit different. The Mustang is obviously retro in a way, but it's also a little bit more modern than the Challenger that's right next to it. We get somewhat sleeker lines, and this is an awful lot smaller. At just over 188 inches long, this is a full 10 inches shorter than the Challenger. And that's because the Challenger has quite a large back seat. The Challenger is based off of FCA's full-size sedan in America, whereas the Mustang actually has a unique chassis right there under the body. It's very noticeable when you look at the back of the Challenger because this is a much larger vehicle back here. And in some ways, this actually is a little bit more retro styled than the Mustang, especially when you take a look at the trunk. The trunk is enormous back here, and we have a big back seat that very easily fits 3 people. Looking at the backs of both vehicles, you can again tell that the Mustang is a smaller vehicle than the Challenger. The rear end is also not quite as blocky, not quite as upright. But I do think that the GT actually looks more aggressive than the Mustang, even though we have notably less power in this particular model than the 707 horsepower Challenger over here. For instance, we have dual integrated exhausts down here at the bottom, but the Mustang has these enormous quad exhausts right down there. We also get more of an aero treatment right down there at the bottom of the bumper, and this is just a little bit more plain. Even the turn signals are a little bit flashier over here on the Mustang, where we get the iconic sequential turn signals right there. We get something a little bit more simple over here on the Dodge. If you're looking for discrete power, so 707 horsepower, that obviously is a little bit showy and a little bit loud, but doesn't necessarily scream as much as the Ford Mustang right over here, then the Challenger might be a good option. But if you're after the sexiest rear end, I'd actually say it's the Mustang. When it comes to front seat comfort, I give the win to the Challenger. Personally, I find its seats to be just a little bit more comfortable than what we see here in the Mustang. The Mustang seats are a little bit sportier, however. We get a little bit more aggressive bolstering on the seat bottom cushions and on the seat back cushions, but if you're much wider than I am, that actually could be more of a problem. So if you have a little bit more width around the shoulder or around the waist, the Challenger is definitely going to be a better option. But if you're a little bit narrower, then these seats might actually be better for you. I also found the steering wheel to be a little bit more comfortable to hold in the Challenger, and the steering column has a fairly similar range of motion. When it comes to rear seat comfort, there's absolutely no contest. The Challenger is a bigger vehicle, and that size difference goes almost entirely to the rear seats and the trunk. I can almost sit upright back here. I do have to cock my head to one side if I want to sit completely in the back, but this is an awful lot more room than we have in the Mustang. And there's actually a relatively generous amount of legroom. With this front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, the front seats are about ½ an inch away from my knees. And there is an honest to goodness middle seat. Now, again, not a lot of room here compared to your average family sedan, but an awful lot more than the average coupe. And then there's that 5th seat belt, of course. Helping improve cargo practicality, even with 707 horsepower, we have a 60/40 folding rear seat back, so you can put longer items into the car. Hopping into the rear seat in the Mustang, on the other hand, requires an entirely different skill set, more like that of a contortionist, and my head is touching the rear window. There's an awful lot less room back here, and if I were to put this seat back into the same position that I had it when I was driving in, my legs would definitely be digging into the seat back. Actually, they're kind of off to the side. And of course, there is no 5th seat belt back here. You might be wondering what the point of rear seat comfort in a 2-door vehicle is. Well, if you want to put a child seat back in the back of your 2-door coupe, it's going to be an awful lot easier in the Challenger than in the Mustang. The trunk is obviously another area where the Mustang is smaller, and this trunk is shaped more like a modern trunk, so the lid covers a horizontal area and a little bit of the vertical area. I realize that may sound a little bit silly, but stay tuned. To help improve cargo practicality, we also have a folding rear seat back, and if you lift up the load floor, we do have a compact spare tire back there. The Challenger's trunk, on the other hand, is shaped a little bit more like a 1980s sedan trunk, although the overall opening is quite large. This is also a very, very large and accommodating trunk. The downside is that we don't have a spare tire under the cargo load floor in this model. Instead, we have a large 2-speaker sunroof and a tire inflator kit. When it comes to our exclusive trunk comfort index, obviously the Challenger wins here. The Mustang's trunk is an awful lot more compact, although there is still just about enough room. In terms of overall style, the interior of the Mustang is definitely a little bit more modern than the Challenger, although both vehicles suffer from basically the same thing I've commented in high-performance vehicles of the past, and that is that this interior is obviously designed to be profitable at the base price for the Mustang, which is lower than the Mustang GT that we're in right here, although I think that's a little bit less of a problem for the Mustang than the Challenger since the price tag does not go up as high. We have Ford's latest infotainment screen, which is Sync 3. This features Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, as well as Waze integration. We have dual zone climate control, heated and ventilated seats, a keyless entry system, the mode buttons for the vehicle, and of course a button to change the steering feel, a pretty traditional console shifter back here, two large stationary cup holders right there between the front seats. And then on the driver's side, we have a very, very attractive LCD instrument cluster. This is a full LCD cluster, and actually this is one of my current favorites for the 2018 calendar year. It's a very, very well done display. This offers a lot of customization. We then have a pretty typical Ford steering wheel right there. It's a round design with a Mustang in the center. And then we have buttons for the infotainment as well as the radar adaptive cruise control system. I think that overall parts quality is actually quite similar between the two vehicles, but definitely the style is quite different. Things are perhaps a little bit more retro here in the Challenger. We have this driver-oriented pod right here that houses the infotainment and navigation system. This also offers the latest Uconnect infotainment system, again with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration. We also have factory navigation, etc. A few more things are done through this touchscreen infotainment system than in Ford Sync. I also think it is just a little bit more responsive than the Ford system. Below that, we have some of the controls that are a little bit more specific to the SRT model we're driving, like the SRT button and the launch button. Obviously, we wouldn't find those two buttons in the base model. We then have the dual zone climate controls and a T-style shifter right here in the center console. The shifter is an electronic style shifter right there in the center console with the manual mode. Behind that, we have two large cup holders, but they are a little bit smaller than what we see in the Mustang. The instrument cluster is quite different than what we see in the Mustang. We actually have physical elements for the speedometer and the tachometer, and then we have a 7-inch LCD between the two. It's not quite as snazzy as what we find in that Mustang. The steering wheel is much more aggressive than the Mustang, however. We have aggressive sport grips up top and on the bottom. We also have a flat bottom right there and sort of a little angled section right here on each side. We have large and aggressive sport paddles on the back, down on the left, and up over here on the right. You'll find the cruise control buttons on the face over here, and then the buttons to that multifunction display over there on the other side. Out on the road, the Mustang definitely feels lighter and tighter than the Dodge Challenger. Now, the Mustang 2.3, I would say, actually feels a little bit more European than the 5-liter V8. This definitely has more weight under the hood. It definitely has more weight in general. But that doesn't mean that the 2.3-liter version is nimble and this is sloppy by any stretch. This is still a very, very capable performance car. It just feels a little bit more like a traditional American performance car. In terms of 0 to 60 acceleration numbers, if you get the automatic transmission and the 5-liter V8, you can get some very, very impressive 0 to 60 numbers, just a hair under 4 seconds 0 to 60. For the record, that is very similar to what you find in a BMW M3, or actually something insane like a BMW X6M. In terms of overall performance, you can go about that fast in a Dodge Challenger. However, you do have to pay an awful lot more for that level of performance. When it comes to braking, it's the same story. Because this is lighter and more nimble, this definitely stops shorter than the Challenger in just about every version. It's not that the Challenger takes a long time to stop, it's just that for a high-performance vehicle, it is a little bit longer than this. When it comes to the overall ride quality, I think the Dodge Challenger wins here. The Mustang has a well-sorted ride for a performance vehicle, but it is definitely a little bit firmer. Even though we have the adaptive suspension in this particular model, and we can set this for a slightly softer ride. Some of that has to do with the overall size of the Challenger, and some of it, of course, has to do with its weight, because it is a bigger and heavier vehicle. When it comes to cabin noise, the Challenger is also a little bit quieter than the Mustang, but in terms of fuel economy, the Mustang wins here hands down. Not just in the 2.3-liter turbo engine equipped model, but also in the 5-liter V8, and I actually thank the 10-speed automatic transmission for that. The 10-speed in this car seems to spend an awful lot more time shifting than the 8-speed transmission that we find in the Challenger, and sometimes it does seem to lose its way a little bit compared to the ZF 8-speed in the Dodge, but overall this is still an excellent transmission with this engine. It helps keep the engine in the meat of its power band. That helps improve not only performance, but also fuel economy, because the transmission always has the right gear for the job. Obviously, plenty of folks will be cross-shopping the Mustang and the Challenger, but I would actually say that these two cars appeal to kind of different shoppers, and they also appeal to different sides of my own personality. The Challenger here has perhaps a little bit of a middle-age spread compared to the Mustang. It feels a little bit bigger, it's a little bit more comfortable, it's a little bit more relaxed. It perhaps feels a little bit more comfortable in its own skin in some ways than the Mustang. Sometimes the Mustang feels a little bit frenetic, it's had a little bit too much coffee. And the Challenger, even in this 700 horsepower version, just feels a little bit more relaxed. Now obviously, as I've said, the big difference is that the Mustang is going to be more fun out on your favorite small track especially, whereas this is going to be an absolute blast on a drag strip or on long sweeping corners where you can really get the most out of this supercharged engine. Of course, if you're really into supercharged engine noises, then this is going to be a good option as well. So which two-door is right for you? Well, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're interested in drag racing, it is obviously going to be the Challenger all day long. That is exactly what the high horsepower versions of this car are made for. Of course, the wide body, which is what we're looking at right here, definitely has handling in mind as well. And this car actually does handle well. I know that the Challenger and the Charger SRTs have been accused of being poor handling vehicles. I actually disagree with that statement. But I do agree that the handling is not balanced in the regular versions of the Hellcat. The thing is, the Challenger and the Charger are actually good handling vehicles in general terms. Normally with performance cars, when they boost power 50 to 100%, they boost handling 50 to 100%. But in the Hellcat, they nearly double the power, and then they improve handling maybe 25 or 30%. That's the problem with the regular Hellcat, and that's why the wide body exists. But of course, it is kind of expensive. If you want the ultimate drag experience, definitely the Dodge Demon. If, however, you're looking for one of the most fun coupes to drive out on your favorite winding mountain road and commute in every day or just drive on the weekend, the Mustang is an absolute blast to drive. Previous versions of the Mustang were not exactly as much fun as some of the European competition or as the Chevy Camaro, but that's different for 2018. For 2018, Ford really did go back to the drawing board and they made the Mustang almost as much fun as a Chevy Camaro. I think the Camaro still has a very slight lead in that department, but everything else about the Mustang I think is superior. I think it's better looking than the Camaro. It definitely has more modern gadgets inside than the Camaro, and I love the engine lineup under the hood of the Mustang. The 5-liter V8 is a great sounding engine, and the 2.3-liter turbo really is an excellent engine as well. The new 10-speed automatic transmission is also definitely an asset to this vehicle. On the downside, of course, the cargo area in the Mustang is smaller and the rear seats are definitely more compact than what we find in the Challenger. So if you're a family of 4 or a family of 5, or if you just want more luggage room in the back, then this might be able to fit your lifestyle better than the Mustang, especially if you have child seats or young children involved. The Mustang is going to be the less expensive option. This starts at $25,845 for the manual transmission and the 2.3-liter turbo. The Dodge starts at $27,295 with the 3.6-liter V6. If you want the Dodge with the V8, then it is going to be a little bit less expensive than the Mustang at $33,995, but that engine is not going to perform the way the Mustang will, and it actually has less power as well, even though it is 0.7 of a liter larger. The GT starts at $35,355, and if you want the same kind of performance or similar in the Dodge, that's going to set you back $38,995 because you have to step up to the 6.4-liter V8 engine. It's worth noting that if you live in the snow belt and you want one of these vehicles with all-wheel drive, the only option is going to be the Dodge, but sadly, only with the base V6 engine. Now be sure and let me know which one you would pick down there in the comment section below. Before we leave you, I should also mention that the Mustang is going to be a better value for the performance. So if you are looking for 0 to 60 for the best dollar amount, the Mustang 2.3-liter turbo definitely beats the V6 Challenger. And of course, the 5-liter V8 version of this beats the 6.4-liter V8 version of this one right here. And it's going to cost you a little bit less over there at the Ford dealer. Let me know which one you would pick down there in the comment section below. And as always, stay tuned for our next upcoming videos. You can click up there to the top of your screen to support us over at patreon.com